So I think we're recording.
Woo!
Hey, how you doing?
You
So good to see you.
too. How are you doing?
As you can see, I'm wearing
Hey.
the gown that you made for me.
I'm still so glad that you like it. And I
love
think
it. I love it so much. That's why I was like, we gotta have a chat and we gotta tell everyone about your cool.
I really the idea of the inspiration that you gave me with the Millennium Falcon actually came out quite nice. Like
exactly,
I like
those like the rusty colors and the grays and it's great because a lot of the stuff you do is like super brightly colorful, which I love as well. But I don't tend to wear those sort of colors, so grays and browns, and this is ideal for me. Thank you.
as well because like actually going since they're all made out of recycled sweaters, it's a little bit different than just going to the fabric store and being like, I want this and this and this. It was actually really fun going and like having a look for sweaters that specifically had sort of like a more textural optic as well. Not just
you can see that they're all different materials here.
So and then
super warm as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no. So I think the idea of using the Millennium Falcon as a reference point was really great, and I think that's also a really interesting point. Like so often when people come up to me and ask if I can make something for them, I go like, okay, do you have some visual reference for me just so that I know we're talking about the same thing? Because I know how my brain works. I don't exactly know how their brain works. So if someone tells me I want something purple, that can mean this much.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that was a really cool thing, and that is something that I really love about working with other creative people as well. Because some of us, we like I know I usually work through textures, colors, and shapes, silhouettes. And then there are other people who work, like you said, like, oh yeah, the Millennium Falcon, which is not just a conglomeration of colors and textures, but there's also sort of like almost like a personality behind it, like the vibe connect to that. So
I knew I was looking for you to, I wanted to give you enough interpretation for you to do your own thing with it as well. I didn't want to be too restricting, but like just using that as a starting point, and I just seen what you'd done before. I knew you'd come up with something awesome, and I couldn't have imagined anything any better than this. So it's perfect. You can't really see on the video, but it's got a real long wizardy hood. I love it. It's so fun. It's definitely been keeping me warm. Like we're starting to head into winter now, so it's super cozy just to cuddle up in. So when did you start making these sort of items?
I think I made my one. That was the first one that I made. And I have to admit, they're all made sort of like with the. There's an American lady. Her name is Cat, or she goes by Cat Wise, and that was the first time that I saw similar stuff like that. And I think mine, I made like 2.5 years ago now, I think. And it was sort of just like a fluke of the moment kind of thing. I was on the weekend and I wanted something because at that point, I was already at Weta and it was like, quite like intense work environment with a lot of time going into it every day. So I wanted to have something that was a little bit shorter in the time frame, that I could do by myself on the weekend or at night, and then just pick up and work on it for an hour or two, and don't have to worry about setup. And I had seen those sweater coats, and I had that in mind, and I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna go to the thrift store and just do a little mission. And that was kind of like the first one that I made, and then I had a few people ask me about it, like you, and then I made one for a friend of mine who lived in Melbourne at that point, and a couple of other ones. I have a really dear friend. She always reminds me of this really cute Hawaii Lolita girl, so I made one like pastel colors for her.
Excellent.
I made a few for them, and that is also something I really enjoy making things specifically for people rather than producing something and then trying to sell it. Not that there's not a valid way of doing it, but I'm just personally more interested in making something specific with someone for someone.
Nice, yes. Because you've also done like bits of leatherwork stuff, and also all a whole range of different garments, eh? Yeah.
Yeah. So so I'm originally from Germany.
Yeah. Cool. Let's start at the beginning. Yeah. We skipped ahead. We skipped way ahead.
And I came here sort of like bit more than 6 years ago. And in Germany, I had done an apprenticeship as a graphic and multimedia designer, and then worked that job full time for a while. So I was in that industry for about 4.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, I decided that I would like to study and just see how I can develop myself. And in Bremen, where I'm from, we have the University of the Arts, and they have a program that is called Integrated Design. And the idea with that one is that you have the three main areas: product design, graphic design, and fashion design. And within the structure of the curriculum, you can just choose different classes from these fields. And basically, make your own course of study out of it. Like you're not as strictly set in one direction. And that was really great for me, because I sort of started out just because that was what I knew, with sort of more graphic design areas, and then slowly branched out a little bit. I did some we called it temporary architecture, so basically like sculptures that work within a certain environment. There are some pictures that I sent you of this little it's basically just a big wall, and there is this hole in there, and I built this little landscape in there, and that was within a class that was just called recycling. So our university was in the harbor district, and so there were heaps of storage buildings that were just empty, and once a year we usually were able to get one of those buildings to build an exhibition for like a week or so that people could come through and have a look at it. And the idea was always that we actually used that building to sort of inform what we were going to do. In that class, I just took basically electro trash, like cables, little LEDs, all these kind of things. And I made them like in this hole in the wall into this little world where like things are flickering and moving in bits and pieces. And like I used all the little computer bits and pieces and chips and stuff and make like little insects out of them.
Awesome, yeah.
That was super.
We'll have to put some images with the video this time. Something that, I think it would look great. Yeah.
So that was super fun. And then sort of from that, I think the first thing that I did more in the direction of fashion design was actually a leather handbag that was sort of like inspired by origami, because the idea was I'm not really a handbag person, but I've seen that in friends of mine. The problem is always like, the bag is either too small or too big. Like, you kind of never have the right size. And then I thought like, oh yeah, it would actually be really helpful if you had a bag that sort of can shrink or expand, depending on what you need. So the whole corpus of that bag was these little folded squares out of leather, and they were folded in a specific way, and then on the inside connected by elastic. So the more you put into it, the more it could expand. And then when you took it off, it sort of shrunk back again. So that whole thing in the end looked a little bit like what are they called? Are they called blowfish? Like the
Excellent. That's a great inspiration. Yeah. Was that intended from the start, or that's just how it sort of
how it looked like in the end?
Yeah. Did you imagine it to look like that, or is that just the?
No, not really. It was just sort of in the end, I was like, this is really funny. It actually does look a little bit like that. And then from there, I like firmly made my way into fashion. But the problem that I always had is yes, obviously, when I'm doing stuff for myself, when I do it for other people, there is a design element involved. But in the end, I'm ultimately more interested in the actual making of things rather than just the design aspect. So even then, when I graduated from that university with a focus in fashion design, And I did that with a collection of mainly like corsetry and sort of like underwear stuff. There are a few pictures that I sent you. And I did it together with a friend. She did all the beautiful headpieces in there. So even then, I was kind of already aware that I was more interested in costume rather than staying with fashion.
Yeah.
And I got really lucky. I got to intern in one of the biggest costume creation companies in Germany. They're called Das Gewand, which basically means the garment.
Cool.
They're in Düsseldorf.
Yeah.
And it was really awesome. While I did my internship there, we actually worked for the National Ballet in Amsterdam, for the Bolshoi Ballet in Moscow, for the Metropolitan Opera, and did costume pieces for them. I think it was for the Met back then. They were doing the Bat, and Victor and Rolf, who are quite known fashion designers, at least sort of Europe, probably not so much here. They did the designs for it, and they had square tutus and all that kind of stuff. And that was like a lot of engineering that went into it. So that was really interesting, and it sort of like, fueled my love for costume even a little bit more. But
so,
yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to ask: was that sort of more like theatre and stage sort of costume things, or was that no film work at that point? That was more, yeah. No, it's still awesome the way.
Or live performance, and it was really good because it was really nice to have that as well and like know that world a little bit works.
Totally.
Yeah, but then I just kind of felt like I actually wanted to get a little bit more education in that field, because even though I already had trained myself quite well in pattern drafting and like different garment making methods and all of that, I just felt, there were still some things that I would actually like to learn in a sort of more structured environment rather than just do it by myself. So, and then that was the time when I applied to Teufelskerdi in Wellington, because while I was studying in Germany, I had done an exchange program to New Zealand here, and at that point I was up in Auckland, where I am now. Yeah, but I found Teufelskerdi in Wellington, and especially the costume construction degree, because what they were doing was actually, they had a focus on the making rather than on the design side, and that was what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Because, in the end, I do have my bachelor in design, and I don't need another one, especially if that's not really what I'm into. And then, luckily I got accepted. They have really small classes. I think the year I was there, we were 10 people. And it's a 2-year degree, a diploma. So I did that. And that was really great because, at Toy, we mainly did live theater. We worked with the School of Dance. It's in the same building. We did a show for the Circa Theater down in Wellington at that point. And it was just really nice. Like, a lot of the things that we learned there, I already had a relatively good base knowledge that helped me. But there was a lot of stuff in terms of, especially like dyeing fabrics and breakdown and all of that, that I probably, could have in the end done it by myself, but it was just really nice having that all together there. And obviously getting contacts, because that in the end was what got me my first job in film. We had Haley May come in, who was doing some millinery with us. And she, in the end, like, she knew from what I was working on for my final project, or again, some pictures that are crazy.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. The big sort of like bird skull like costume thing. It's incredible, Johanna. Yeah.
I really love that one. It's from a Warhammer character. It's it's the disciple of the Chaos God Zench.
Nice.
With that piece, it was really cool because I was actually looking for something that was challenging me, because, like my garment construction was already relatively good. So I figured I'd just branch out in some areas that I haven't done a lot. The big staff that it has, like the prop making, and then the big mask and all of that. So those were all things that I hadn't done a lot of before. So that's why I chose that. And because there's so many little details on this thing. Like, the skirt took me like, I think 2 weeks to paint.
Right.
And I just absolutely love projects like that when I have the time and the scope to do it, where you just, go in and you have all these little bits and pieces.
Yeah, it's a
So
fantastic portfolio piece. It's just really, like you say, it's so
and
many
it's so great when people see the pictures, they don't actually understand that it's like life size, that it's a full costume, that
yeah,
they still often think it's like a miniature or something. I'm like, no, there's actually a person in there. Yeah, and especially the mask was really cool. So the idea with that project is that we find a drawing or a painting or whatever, but it can't be a photograph. It can't be a photograph of an existing piece, because the idea is it's going to prepare us to work with designers, when we get drawings, reference material from them, and then being able to take information from that drawing that we need in terms of like, okay, so what kind of fabric is that? How would it move? Is it something that's quite heavy or like more loose, drapey? Does it have a shine to it? Yeah, all these informations, and and then sort of translating that into the actual piece that we're going to do. And the other thing was we only had a budget of $250 for it, because especially when you work for live performance, your budgets are often relatively small. So like being inventive in the materials that you're using and how you're using them so that you can actually make that happen. And because of that, that whole mask is actually all paper mache. And in the end, my budget was
you did a good job of it.
Yeah. But in the end, my budget was like so small that I couldn't even afford to buy the PVA anymore. So what I used was flour and water, like as a homemade glue.
Really?
It actually worked really well. It just takes forever to dry because, again, I was working through it through winter. So I just had it like lights on it next to the heater.
Yeah, it'd be quite humid, eh?
Yeah, but that piece is actually like, I'm still quite proud of it. And then in the end, it's skinned with a purple suede leather skirt that I found in an op shop for like $5 or something, and then painted over again. But that whole mask is actually articulate, like it's two separate pieces, the top and the bottom. So when the person inside is wearing it, it's actually strapped to your lower jaw. So you have to do like quite exaggerated movement, but the beak opens and closes if you do it.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That would have been great.
It was a really, really cool piece to be working on, and yeah, I'm still really in love with it. And Stephen Acord, who took the pictures, did a really great job with like setting that all up. Great.
Did you get to keep it in the end, or what happened to it?
Yeah, it's in Wellington. Yeah, it's in our. And I've
Oh.
actually worn it a couple of times. At like, I'm personally not a big cosplayer, but I've been to Armageddon a few times because friends of mine are really into it, and yeah, I've worn it a couple of times. It's actually the only problem is your field of vision is about this big, so you sort of need someone to go with you to be a good.
Yeah, I was made a Tusken Raider costume, and I used shot glasses for the eyes, and even before I got it was when I was at uni, and we went down to the uni bar, and I didn't realize that someone had opened the door, but they'd only opened it halfway, and I just walked straight into the middle of them, just shattered it. Didn't hurt that much, but it kind of shattered the shot glasses. Funny, eh? Yeah, it's funny, that thing.
Well, like that. I'm actually like still my my actor who presented that piece in the end in our costume showcase. She did an absolutely fantastic job. She had this massive big staff with that sort of snake wing thing on top, and she had done Moraku when she was a little bit younger, so like Maori stick fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, like, this thing is like so heavily oversized and like really top heavy, and you can't really do anything with it. Like in my mind, she would just like walk around with it and like look really regal. And she like held that thing and was like, yeah, no, it's a bit more heavy and it's a bit longer, but I think I can do something with it. And keep in mind, she has this massive mask with a beak that comes out to here, this big collar that goes like up to here. So, and she's in costume, she has the staff, and like takes it, twirls it over her head behind her back, rams it into the ground, and looks at me, and I just honestly like almost peed myself. I was like, it was amazing. She did such a fantastic job with it.
Yeah. But did you have like a show at the end of your degree?
Yeah, so that's, I mean, we as costumiers are often basically always involved in any of the shows that are being put on over the time that we're studying there. But then the costume showcase is like our time to shine. It's that point where it's actually all about the costume, because usually it's more, the costume is sort of more in service of, you know, what the character is supposed to be, what's gonna happen in the whole piece, all of that. Yeah, and with the costume showcases, like that one thing where we have the chance to go like, no, I really want my costume to be here. I want this light hitting here, and then I want this actor to do this, so you can see the skirt twirling or whatever, you know.
Yeah, perfect.
But yeah, that was really exciting.
Yeah, that's great. Especially something that's meant to be worn. It would be so good to see it in person. You know, like you say, moving and flowing. You know, rather than just a photograph can't tell you all that information. You know, well, although the photographs that you do have are excellent as well, and they do a pretty good job of that. But yeah.
But it's not the same. Like when I think back to uni, you know, all the fashion photo shoots that we did, and that was another reason why I always found like I wanted to actually make something specific for people, like bespoke stuff, because all these photo shoots, when I think about how much was pinned and clamped and in the back, you know, like you had this one angle that everything looked absolutely perfect, and if you would go like 10 centimeters to one side or the other, you would see like all the clothes pins and whatever was in there, and I was like, I'm really not interested in that. Like, I want to
Yeah.
make things that actually work, you know?
Yeah.
That was also then, so the models that we chose, me and my friend, for our graduation show in Germany, we actually ran into a lot of trouble with our professors, because we chose women that we found, like we were literally going on scouting missions. Like we had these 6 characters that we sort of thought out, you know, that we wanted to have in our final collection. And we specifically went out, like we had this one person where we went like, yeah, I think like that person we would probably meet at a rockabilly concert or something. So we started going to rockabilly gigs, and we're just like scanning the crowd, and you know, we found all these women that we wanted. And they weren't all size 0, because we weren't interested in that, you know. We wanted to have like charisma and like the actual, like, yes, you can dress someone up to look like the rockabilly stereotype kind of thing, but it's a very different thing than if you have someone who is really part of that culture, and for them it's not a costume, you know, it's a
A lot more
personality.
genuine. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we had some girls there, they were size, well, if you translate that now, maybe like 18. But who says that they don't deserve wearing beautiful things, you know? Who says
No.
that they're not supposed to wear corsetry and sexy underwear?
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, we actually we had to sit down with our professors and had that discussion, because they were like, you can't do this, and we're like, what? Why not? And they're like, because it's fashion, you know. And we're like, no, this is not the point. We actually want to make things for, I hate this term, but like real people, you know.
Yeah.
Other, obviously
Yeah.
models are real as well, but
Sure. Yeah.
more interested in having a bit more of variety there, to just display more of what is actually out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the end, after a lot of discussion, they let us do that, and you know,
Right.
we got a pretty good grade in the end, even though they were still a bit different with us. It's not going to have to fight for the things that are important to you, right?
Totally. That's good on you. Well done. And
Yeah. And now, wait, let me get the where we were. Oh yeah, first job in film. I was just trying. Yeah, so when I was working on my graduation piece at Toy Facati, we had Haley May come in, who is a millinery artist, and she's doing a lot of sort of like gloves and like that specialty costume stuff as well.
yeah.
And I had a chat with her, and I told her that, you know, I was sort of interested in um, yeah, these like mask making things, props, that kind of stuff. So when she was at that point, she was working at Ghost in the Shell.
Mm-hmm.
And when the head of costume props, Brian Edwards, said that he was looking for someone to like fill up their team and like do a little bit of stuff, she was really lovely and actually contacted me and asked if I, you know, wanted to have a go at that. So that was really exciting. So I did like a trial week
Yeah.
there. yeah, I was lucky enough that they were like, yeah, okay, cool, you can come back. So that was super exciting.
Yeah,
and working with Ryan on 3 different projects so far, and yeah, we get along really well. He's a really great boss. I really love working with him. He's super supportive, and we just like we riff off each other really well, and the way how our skills are spread out, like, just merge really well together. So yeah, I always really enjoy when I have the option of working with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I got really lucky as well, because so for me, obviously, you know, coming from Germany, I needed a visa to study here, but that was quite easy because I got accepted at the university, so that was relatively straightforward. And well, I mean, the other thing is, like, I got 2 scholarships, otherwise I wouldn't be able to make this international fees.
Wow, that's great. Nice.
Yeah, so after I finished that diploma, there, at least back then, I don't know if that's still the case, but like back then there was the option to finish a degree. You can get a study to work visa, which, if you get accepted for that, gives you 1 year of an open work visa, basically. And luckily that worked out, and I got that, so I could actually go and work at Ghost in the Shell. So that was my first big real life film job. It was really exciting, actually, like, you know, having Scarlett Johansson in there for fittings. And I have it, you know, I was a little bit like,
yeah,
that was
totally.
really exciting.
Such a beautiful film, eh? So many different. Oh, I imagine the costumes for that, making them would have been great fun.
Yeah, I mean, because I was in costume props, I obviously sort of didn't do. So costume props is always, it's a really fun thing. Like, I really love working in that department because it has so many different elements.
Yeah.
I would get bored if I had only one thing to do. So, but costume props gives me the option of, like, you know, doing a lot of leather work, doing some sculpting, doing some molding, casting. Unfortunately, I'm really allergic to some of the urethanes that are used for casting, so I can't do that. But, like, you know, working around that, rigging, doing like weird little specialty things like helmets with like inbuilt bits and pieces. And for Ghost in the Shell, one thing that I was really fucking language that I was really excited about, especially for that, you know, being my first job, I actually got to work on the flak vests for Scarlett. And yeah, making the piece that Scarlett Johansson was wearing, you know, at the very first thing straight out of uni, that was like a big deal.
Of course it is. Oh, big deal. Yeah, that's great.
That movie came out, I was like, I made this, and my name is in the credits. That's really exciting.
Was that at Stone Street, or was that up in Auckland at that time?
No, that was at Stone Street.
Yeah, cool.
Here up in Auckland, the job that I'm on now is actually the first job that I have outside of Wellington.
Yeah.
Like, everything else was always sort of around there. So I did Ghost in the Shell, and then I worked on WoW that year, World of Wearable Arts. I was doing and props. I was working with Nadine Yagi on that, and that was really awesome because Nadine Yagi is, when I did research for my graduation collection in Germany, I came across her work. She's Swiss Kiwi. Her parents are from Switzerland and came over here, and she's most known for her really beautiful leather work. So I've seen her stuff, and then while I was at Toy, and you know, they used to bring in tutors from the industry to like do little specialty stuffs with us, like Haley Mayfield. They were at some point like, oh yeah, we're getting someone in to do some leather work with you. And I had done a little bit of leather work, but not that much at that point. So I was really excited about it. And then Nadine rocks up, and I had to admit, like, I was like a little bit fangirly. I was like,
yeah, totally.
Oh my god! And yeah, she's only a couple years older than me, so and at that point, like, most of the girls that I studied with were about like 8 to 10 years younger than me, so that made it a little bit easier for me to sort of talk to her, you know, like the barrier didn't feel as big. Yeah, so it's really awesome. And because of that, she then approached me if I wanted to work on WoW with her, and her partner was running the props and stage team at that point. So we made like a pair of massive angel wings out of plastisode, which is like this hard like foam stuff. They were sort of like on stage, and then one of the actors would stand in front of it and they would project on it. But the thing was like, because they were so big, they had like steel armature in it, so they didn't like just break off.
Yeah.
But then there's still a bit of movement. The finish that we put on it needed to be sort of flexible as well. So we spent like a week doing like little trials with like PVA and different pigments and finishes and blah. So, it was another thing where I actually just learned a lot about all the different bits and pieces. And then we also made this massive tree. It was, I think, 8 meters high. So it was like roots, sort of like tree trunk, and then like a few branches coming off.
Yeah.
And so it has this base structure, and then there was foam around it, but then it had golden scales. So they actually went through the process of finding like the right gold foiled cardboard and all of that had that all laser cut, and then we actually had to hand staple them on. So we spent
on a big tree that would be a big job, eh? Yeah.
It was a lot. And then because the place where we were working, and we were out in Lower Hutt, it wasn't high enough that we could actually put the two pieces on top of each other. So there was no way to actually have the whole tree. And the tree, like, it had a very specific way in how the scales were spiraling around it. So we sort of had to figure out from the two pieces, just like sitting next to each other, how that would flow. And then once we were at the ASB arena down at the waterfront, I always mix it up with the two.
Yeah, it keeps getting different sponsor names. It was Westpac, and I don't know what it is at the moment. Is it Sky? I think even.
World of Warblocks takes place.
Yeah.
Once and we actually got the two pieces on top of each other, then we had to, like, from the balcony, like leaning over, doing like the last rows to sort of connect everything. And what else did we make? Oh, we made movable jungle pieces, because they had a part of the show that was in a jungle. That was when Weta made that big animatronic tiger, and the guy who played Birds was voicing the tiger.
Yeah.
So we made like, all these big, massive jungle things with fake plants that were left over from King Kong.
Excellent.
Yeah. Again, a thing that when you start out as a fashion design student or even costume, you don't necessarily think about that this is in the end what you're ending up doing. But I really love the randomness of my job that like takes me in all these different directions.
Exactly.
And then
what
else?
Within making, it's all transferable skills anyway. Like once you kind of have the mind for that sort of thing, you can take your hand to anything, eh?
And look, even the stuff that I learned for graphic and multimedia design and such still comes in so handy, even if it's just like a little bit of photo editing, I had to do a lot of copywriting and stuff, a little bit of that, project management. I did a lot of project management while I was doing that job as well. Super helpful now to sort of plan out, and especially now when I'm working with Ryan from time to time, I have some people that I need to coordinate as sort of like a little sub-team.
Yeah.
And it's just really helpful knowing a little bit of how to do that.
Yeah, totally. All feeds into it.
Yeah. And then I worked on a little TV series. I think it was called Frontier Men. And it was actually I think Leonardo DiCaprio produced it. It was a really weird random thing. And because actually it was cheaper for them to fly the actors and everyone over here to New Zealand and film it here than film it over in the States.
Funny how that works out sometimes, eh? I wonder if it's amazing how many big Hollywood films are not made in Hollywood or even in the United States at all. Often.
really funny. Like when I tell people, especially outside of New Zealand, that I work in the film industry, and they go like, "But Lord of the Rings is already done. What else do you do down there?"
Yeah,
I'm like,
exactly.
funny. You don't
Yeah,
even know.
yeah,
I think it's just because we have such a unique standing here. We have these big studios up in Auckland and in Wellington. We have Weta as a great company who does so many different things. We have Weta Digital for all the post-production stuff, and Park Road Post, obviously. And then we have the absolute advantage of the just the scenery that we have here. You can put a team in a helicopter, and in 2 hours you can either have deserts or snow or tropical jungle or beaches or mountains or whatever else one.
yeah.
It's all here.
It's
I
all
don't.
here, and there aren't too many people living on top of it either, so you don't have to erase too much stuff, and yeah, yeah, it is a very beautiful country to live in. We're very lucky. Yeah.
I don't really think there's any other country in the world where you have that much variety so close to production hubs and like all these bits and pieces. So like, yeah, I think in that regard with the film industry, we're actually
Yeah.
lucky. Oh yeah, and then model engines.
Oh
I didn't
wow.
want that. But that was also the time where it was like really stressful for all my visa stuff because study to work visa had run out. And then from that point on, I needed to get a specific purpose visa, which was then like, you're allowed to work for this company in this position. You would probably know that.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, that was stressful. And then, slowly like getting everything together, trying to apply for residency and all of that. I'm so glad that this is done and dusted now. That
Totally.
was like a few years. That was like, yeah, struggling when you don't know, like especially when you're in the process of applying for it, and when you don't know if you're next week, if you're still going to be here, or if you have to leave the country, And at that point, I was already living here for 4 years. I had like the center of my life was here, and the idea of like actually having to pack up my stuff, leave, go to a place that I haven't called home in quite a long time was daunting. But luckily,
talking to someone who's very familiar with those that emotional roller coaster as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm just so glad that it all worked out. But hey, here we go. Yeah.
So did they sponsor you then, Johanna?
No.
No. How did that work?
They were vehemently against that.
Yeah.
And I actually find it quite interesting, like, judging by how much revenue the film industry brings into the country, that there is not a more sort of specialized situation for contract workers in film with immigration.
Yeah.
Because the biggest trouble that I ran into was actually the wording of all the stuff that I needed to fill out, because it always was talking about employees. And when I was talking to the people in the HR department for model engines, they were really like, no, you're not an employee, you're a contractor. And I'm like, yes, I do understand that. And, with everything that's going on here, like it's very clearly lined out to keep on if the project is not further or whatever. But it was mainly because of the wording that actually caused a lot of issues there. Yeah. No, I luckily then in the end, after that was all done, I got the job at Weta. They were super helpful. It was really great. I also guess because they have so many international artists there, like for them it's a little bit more of a common thing,
Yeah. It was that was I when I came to New Zealand, I'd already interviewed for Weta before coming over, so it was a kind of peace of mind, and it's very so much of my freelance work, I found out about the job really short before, starting, a few days before starting. So luckily, at least, with Weta being a bigger company, they were a bit more organized in terms of like giving a start date that had me enough time to book a flight. It's still Still wasn't a long time. It was still less than a month, but it was enough time to, pack up my stuff and exactly, completely move my life to the other side of the planet.
Yeah. Because usually, I mean, let's be honest, now with film jobs, it's often you get a call and it's like all really vague and like, yeah, there might be this thing that might be starting up at some point.
Yeah.
And you're like, cool, sounds good. I would love to be on that. And then you don't hear anything for a few weeks or even months. And then all of a sudden you get another call and be like, hey, can you start next Monday? You're like, I guess, yeah. Cool.
Excellent. Yeah. And you said you were at Weta for 2 years in the end, eh? Or roughly that. Yeah.
Nice. I've been there for around 2 years on a big project. That was really great. Just in terms of like the team that I got to work with, so many very talented people, but in like very different directions. And especially that team, what I really enjoyed was what was going on with all the skill sharing of like, sometimes you can feel a little bit like sitting by yourself when you're trying to figure out how to make a thing from like a drawing that a designer gives you. Like, okay, so by all laws of physics, I shouldn't be able to make this because I don't know. And in that team, it was always really great. Like there was always someone that you could go to, like, hey, what do you think? Like, if you look at this, what type of material do you think would be best suited for this, or what technique? And that specific project also allowed me to learn so many different new skills. Things that I had already on my list that I wanted to try out, but with the hours that we're working, it's a bit difficult to find the time, and sometimes you need quite specific materials for that. So then by yourself to invest a lot of money into that when you don't even know if it's something that in the end suits you, or, that you want to stick with. So that was really amazing, having that opportunity and just, branching out even more in like, ooh, I want to dabble in this and I want to do this and I want to do this because, as I said, I get bored if I have to do the same thing.
Yeah, and just continually learning and growing is I think it's good for everyone, really. Yeah.
And that was a project that like challenged me in quite a few ways. Like most of it was good. Sometimes it was a bit difficult. Really, because at that point I had like a little bit of trouble, sort of depression, anxiety. There's a lot of, and I guess it's a thing that I hear from a lot of artists, especially the anxiety part, where you always have this sort of little bit of an imposter syndrome, and you're constantly going like, I'm actually not good enough for this, but please accept what I made, And it's really interesting. I think it's a thing that's important to talk about because I have so many creative friends who have same issues, and it's always really amazing to me when I talk to them, because I see their work. I'm like, man, this is fantastic what you're doing. How are you even coming up with all of that? And they're sitting in the same hole that I'm sitting in with the feeling of like, oh, I don't think it's actually good enough, and like, look at this little bit here, it's not quite perfect, and this little bit, and all the things that we're focusing on with our work, all the things that we think are so blatantly obvious, what we often have to think about is that most of the people who look at it actually not trained specifically in what we're making. So, they have very different things.
Totally.
So
I think model makers and prop makers have such a critical eye, which is, not a bad thing. It's a good thing because it is required to make something so beautiful and intricate and perfect. But that level and that standard, is above and beyond, and is almost like superpower level, like expectation, and that is a lot to live up to, and that is quite a lot of pressure sometimes, but at the same time, you can be making things that are pretty much spot on, but if there's one flaw in it, you can beat yourself up over it, and it's ridiculous because like I say, to the public, or even for what it's going to be used for in a film, it'll be above and beyond what it needs to be.
And I mean, you're right. Like, it's a skill that we absolutely need, especially in film. When you have to do multiples of things, they just have to look the same. You can't just have like one thing that goes this way and one thing that goes that way. It's just not a thing. And I love training my eye for that. I love having such an accurate eye that I can go like, no, this is 4 millimeters, not 5. It's fascinating to me. Like, I love that. But yeah, sometimes it can be quite challenging as well, because if you apply that to every other bit of life, you're not even only to your artistic work, but like the way of, I don't know, like sometimes I do performance work, like I'm a dancer, so like I always have this thing of like, why would you let me on stage? I'm not good enough. Look at all these other people who are so much better, and there are still people who enjoy what I'm doing, and I enjoy what I'm doing.
Well, that's the important thing. Yeah,
So
yeah.
like, it's just really weird constantly like having this juxtaposition between being proud of what you're doing and what you're achieving, and on the other hand bashing yourself up because like it's just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because too far the other way would be like arrogance, and you wouldn't be improving, you wouldn't be learning. If you thought everything you did was perfect, even if it was crap, you wouldn't be getting any better. Yeah, which but everyone, I think everyone tends to be on the other side of the spectrum, which is quite harsh on themselves, which again does come at a bit of a mental health cost. Or if you don't keep on top of it and support each other, it can be like that. But yeah, I think luckily there is a good family. People do encourage each other, and are quite supportive, even though we kind of get used to a particular standard. So yeah, I find lots of different places of work.
What often goes with it as well is, funnily enough, the will and the love to support everyone else, but being trouble to extend that to yourself.
Interesting.
Like we're all so ready when someone asks for help to be there and to do everything to help them and to reassure them that they're doing absolutely fantastic. But doing that for ourselves sometimes can be really.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, if someone else complains about a flaw, you'll be like, "What are you talking about? That's great. You don't even worry about that at all." But then your little flaw is like this giant. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you're,
You just get blind to everything that's around it. Like you just get tunnel vision of this tiny little thing.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I guess in the end, it's also like part of what makes us better, because as you said, even if you think your work is perfect, and even if it is, if you just stay there and be like, I don't have to do anything anymore, this is it. Eventually, there will be people who just become better than. And it's not even like I don't really like making it all into this sort of like race and competition. It's not about being better than someone else. I feel like it's more about, becoming better in comparison to yourself. When you look at the work that you did like a few years ago and what you're doing now, if you can see an improvement there, I think that's the only thing that really matters.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah, I think that's people are more competitive than with themselves than they are with each other in general. Yeah, it's good.
And then it's also the part of like, once you come to a point where you have a certain amount of knowledge, then sort of not hoarding it, not sitting on it, but actually sharing it.
Yeah.
That's something that I really enjoy. Like I love teaching people about leather work, or what I often do for the type of festivals that we're going to, sort of like Kiwi Burn inspired, that kind of whole community where there is a lot about sharing and giving yourself and what you have into the community. So a workshop that I've been running at a few of those festivals was dyeing fabric with kitchen waste, and it sort of came out of the whole idea that it's that those festivals are leave no trace. So like everything that you bring in, you have to bring out again, and that extends to like, let's say, onion peels or like other things like black beans, whatever, soaking water stuff that we use in your camp kitchen. And I sort of like from my first festival on that I went to, I was like, oh, it would be really cool if you can take it one step further and like maybe use those things and make something out of it. And at that point, I had like very little knowledge about natural dyes and all that kind of stuff. So like I sort of started looking into it and trying to see what I can find in terms of resources and all of that. And I sort of like built my knowledge up about that. And yeah, I often run now a workshop about dyeing fabric with natural dyes, like made from onion peels, made from turmeric, the soaking water of black beans, red cabbage, all of that. And it's super exciting because what I really love about doing those workshops at that kind of festival is that people are already in a playful mood.
Yeah.
You know, it's often when they sit down, they're going a little bit, oh my God, I need to make this a really beautiful thing. But usually, like once they start doing that and start playing with the colors, and I feel like colors is just such an intuitive kind of thing to get people to that place.
Mm-hmm.
I just start experimenting, and I actually learned so much from people doing my workshop about how certain things interact. Because a really cool thing about these dyes is you can shift the color hues through the pH spectrum. So you can change it either with baking soda to make it a little bit more alkaline, or with vinegar to make it more acidic, and the colors will change. And it's like magic, you know. You have this thing that's purple, and you spritz it with vinegar, and it turns pink. Or
That's
you
incredible.
spritz it with baking powder water, and it turns blue. And it's just
Yeah.
really fantastic. And yeah, that's the thing that I just really love. It's such a fun thing, and it gives everyone a piece that they can take home later. There's this that I sent you as well of like some of those fabric pieces. And that's something that I actually did now like a few weeks ago. I think it was the first week that we went into level 4 lockdown here in New Zealand, and I was thinking about, okay, you know, I have some friends who have kids at home, and I'm like, it would be nice if you could do something, you know, that's creative and just gives you a little bit of time and a break and like play for everyone who's involved. So a little live stream about that, and I changed it up a bit. I think I called it something like dyeing fabrics with what you have in your kitchen cupboard or something.
Yeah, perfect though. Yeah,
like having a look, and and especially being able to do it with children because it's non-toxic.
Yeah.
Substances in there, you know, and just like seeing what you have at home that you can use for that kind of stuff. So that was I really enjoyed that. And then because yes, we're in lockdown, or kind of still are level 3 now, but so even for my own practice, you know, I need a creative outlet. I need something to do, otherwise I just run my head against the wall. I was wanting to do some leather work, but I didn't have any glue, I didn't have any dyes. So I started doing some research about, you know, how would have people done that before we had all these synthetic things that we use.
Right.
So I did like a whole array of like trying out like natural dyes on leather. That was really fun, like figuring out what works there and what doesn't work. And I even a recipe for glue that is, I'm actually really impressed how well it works. Again, it's non-toxic. It's really great because depending on how much you heat it up, you can have it in a more gel-like texture or quite liquid.
Interesting.
It takes about 24 hours to like actually get its bond strength, but it is pretty strong. And it's water, glycerin, gelatin, and vinegar. And you know, again, it's like it's something that is, well, you probably shouldn't eat it by the spoonful, but you know, it's toxic thing that we work.
True. Yeah, there's no harmful fumes so much, and you know, you wouldn't have to wear your respirator or gloves, and
No. Come on, it's fine.
Yeah, and it'll decompose. It won't, you know. Yeah.
So like this is really exciting. That's something that I feel like I would love to now like look into it a little bit more and see how I can use it, at least in my projects that I do for myself.
Yeah, eco prop making. That's the next thing.
Yeah.
And also I like the idea of like, especially with lockdown, like what's coming up is like things that have to be like locally sourced as well, you know, rather than relying on exporting, you know, weird chemicals from China or whatever. You know, if all of a sudden you can't get stuff, what can you use instead? You know, it's very interesting, eh? And sustainable stuff as well, I think is very important going forward as well.
You only have limited equipment at home, you know, because I don't know. Sometimes I get into a little bit of doom prep idea and be like, okay, what if the borders are actually closed for this long? We're not able to get anything in, you know, then okay, make do with what I already have. And I don't know, I like that challenge as well, trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, in that regard, it was quite a productive time for me. I again put on Facebook, like I did what I call my like quarantine collection. So I was actually sewing quite a lot of stuff. And I got these really beautiful fabrics from Harmless Solutions here in New Zealand. They're organic bamboo fabrics, so like really sustainable. The problem, like, even with natural materials, like let's say cotton, it's great, but it takes so much water to grow, and then through the processing as well, it's unfortunately not really a sustainable material, even if it's organic or whatever. Like, yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Not that great. Whereas the bamboo, it grows super fast, which apparently is, and that's what I learned as well. I don't know if people know that. I found that fascinating. Bamboo is actually a grass.
Yeah, right.
That's why it grows fast.
Yeah.
You need way less water, even to like process the whole thing into fibers. And Harmless Solution has a really beautiful variety of fabrics, like different kind of sweater, jerseys, and t-shirt weight fabrics. And they even have a velour, which is sort of like a velvety kind of fabric. And they take colors so beautifully. I have not used these with natural dyes yet. I have used mainly commercial dyes on them, but I would be really interested to see how that could potentially go. But like I sort of like sewed half a wardrobe for me during this lockdown, and then some things for my flatmates as well. And I did some leather work here, and I did a bit of this and a bit of that. And so like, yeah, for me, this period was actually quite nice. I finally had time to do all the I wanted to do.
Totally, and learning completely new avenues to pursue, like whether it's at festivals or for other reasons later down the line. Yeah, great. Yeah, I always see that you're always very active. Even when you are working, you've often got quite a lot of side projects going. Very prolific artist, and yeah, very inspiring for a lot of people listening. So that's really awesome. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or do you want to leave it there?
I don't know, like one thing that you mentioned that you really enjoyed looking at was the piece that I did for the cosplay competition together with.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. Yes, that was for an Australian Comic Con sort of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that was for Blizzard Games when they brought out the new skins for Overwatch. And they had done that cosplay battle, I think, in the States and in Europe before as well. So this one was New Zealand, Australia, like the Oceania version of it, basically. As I mentioned a while ago, like I've never really gotten into cosplay. It's like I love making things. I don't necessarily enjoy having to be a character that is not at least partially who I am. But yeah, Sanit and Victoria have both been really active in the cosplay scene for years. So Sanit got actually approached by Blizzard if he wanted to be the captain for the New Zealand team. And then, he asked Vic and me if we wanted to be part of that. And we were competing against 3 Australian teams. And we chose the character of the Reaper. And there are some pictures there. And it was again like one of these challenges where you have screenshots from a computer game, and you're trying to make that into reality, which sometimes is just like
different set of physics in reality.
Yes. But I think all in all, we did a really great job. And it was quite intense. Like for me, I did some little bits and pieces. Vic mainly did the sewing part, the sort of soft costuming part, and the pattern drafting for that. Sanit did the armor, like helmet and all of that. I did work on some like the scales that you can sort of see a little bit through there, the shoes, and then I did all the programming for the light up effects in that whole armor thing, and all the wiring. everything. And I had played with LEDs a little bit before, but that was the first time that I actually got into it with like microcontrollers and like programming and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So again, one of these things where I'm like, hey, I really want to try that, and along comes a project where it's like, all right. Yeah, and again, one of these things where you're like, you have a deadline that is like a few months away, and you're like, yeah, we're gonna be sweet. Yeah. And eventually you sit there the night before and you're like, ah. So like the night before we had the photo shoot, I pulled an all-nighter, wiring everything, because obviously everything else had to be ready before I could do the wiring, and we had to figure out the rigging and how everything comes together. So I did that. Went to bed at 4, slept for an hour, get up at 5 so that we could prep everything for the photo shoot, because we were meeting with Josh, I think at like 7 in the morning. Josh Groom, who took the pictures of it, really, really great guy, really great photographer. We had such a fun day. So yeah, we got some really beautiful studio photography, and then we went out to one of the bunkers in Shelley Bay and took pictures there. And like all in all, I'm so happy with how this piece turned out. And then Blizzard actually flew us over to Melbourne to PAX so that we can present our piece together with the other 3 teams. And unfortunately, we did not win, but it was a great experience. And then like walking around and
the level of all of the costumes were incredible, though. It was like,
Absolutely.
very impressive. Cosplay has taken on another. I think it keeps going up, doesn't it? It started off quite crude, but it's definitely now at a level that's pretty close to film standard, eh?
Yeah.
For some,
absolutely. And, I don't know, like if you feel like Vic would definitely and Sun, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I would love to speak to those guys. I good friends with both. Yeah,
so that was really interesting for me, sort of like using the skills that I learned on film in sort of costume props way, and using it on a project that I would have probably not gone into, because I'm not part of that whole cosplay world. But working with those two was definitely fun, and I think we made a really good piece there in the end.
Yeah, dream team. It's great. Yeah, it's not having just like quite a small 3-person thing, because you still get quite a lot of ownership over it, and the fact that you flew out with it as well. It's cool seeing something from complete start to finish. That's great.
That's something I do really enjoy, because we so rarely get that in film, because there's the piece that you're working on goes through so many hands. Like, it's very, very rarely that you have like one piece where you're like, I need this whole thing. Like, I did a little bit on this, and I had some gluing on that, and some sanding, and some casting, and then I slapped some paint on it.
Yeah. By the time the props left the workshop, a whole chain of people have worked on it at that point, and it doesn't feel. It's a great way of doing it because it's an efficient way of doing it, but it doesn't feel as personal as like these projects where you get to completely drive it yourself.
Yeah, and the same like with the bits and pieces that I do for other people, or even for like I do really enjoy freedom to doing everything from like research and trialing out to like all the way to the finished thing. That's a very important part of the satisfaction that I get from the work that I'm doing.
Excellent. Yeah, well, you should be very proud of it. Yeah, it's great. Have you guys got to keep that, or has that gone to Blizzard now?
No, it's with Sonnet, I think.
Sonnet, excellent. Yeah, so maybe if I interview Sonnet, he might be able to show us bits.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he has his workroom, or at least stored somewhere.
Yeah.
Because we all have that.
Full A. He gets to do a lot of different costume stuff. I love it. Yeah.
Our work, the flat where Vic and me live, it's getting full. Like, it's not a lot of room anymore.
Yeah, that's great though. It's so fun. Yeah, the house that me and my uni mates moved into straight after graduating, because we'd all just finished our uni projects. We had 2 or 3 big projects, so it just became this sort of like den of prop making den of like all these crazy creations.
Yeah,
good fun. I like that though. It's fun.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely great. I love it too. But eventually, when you go like, "Hey, I need a mannequin," all our mannequins are actually sort of on display with everything that's on. Take everything off.
Yes.
No, but it's my preferred way of decorating the place where you live.
Sure, very personal. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, are you happy with that?
Yeah. No, I think covered a lot. I hope.
Yeah, we have. It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, and again, thank you for my amazing job.
Thank you for asking me. I really enjoyed this.
No, it's great. Yeah. And we'll put loads of, I'll try and edit it so we can put the photographs in with the video as well, because it's really important that people see it. And we'll also chuck a few of those photos on the Instagram thing as well, so people can have a look at it there.
Cool. Yay.
Thanks again, Johanna.
You're welcome.
I'll catch you soon. All right, cheers.
Bye.